This video is brought to you by Straight Goods News, Canada's alternative online news source. Visit straightgoods.ca.
Thanks very much for being here today. As we face unprecedented skill shortages across the country, it's going to be critical that we work to help Canadians find available jobs and keep them. And it's equally important that the employment insurance program work effectively for Canada and for Canadians. In short, we want to help Canadians who want to work get back to work. Today, I'm pleased to announce improvements to employment insurance to make it work better for Canadians. EI is Canada's single largest labour market program, and our government is taking action to ensure that it remains fair, flexible, and that it helps Canadians who want to find work. But first, let's look at the big picture. Our country's strong economic performance continued through 2012. In fact, since July 2009 up until March 2012, more than 750,000 new jobs were created, resulting in the strongest employment growth by far among G7 countries. Our economic prosperity, however, depends on our ability to meet emerging and growing labour market challenges. It depends on our competitiveness, and it depends on our agility. Chief among these challenges are skill shortages, which will be intensified by our aging population and strong competition for skilled workers at the international level. Now, some of these challenges are very much present now and are hindering our ability to prosper as a country. According to Statistics Canada, in the fall of last year, there were 250,000 job vacancies across the country. Nous savons que les Canadiens et les Canadiennes veulent travailler, mais ils font souvent face à des défis lorsqu'ils cherchent un emploi. We know that Canadians want to work, but they often face challenges finding work. Now, the reasons for this are many. Some individuals may not know how or where to find available jobs, while others may not be aware that their skills match needs in other industries or sectors. Que faisons-nous donc pour aider les chômeurs à trouver un emploi? So what are we going to do to help unemployed workers find jobs? Well, as announced in Economic Action Plan 2012, over the next 2 years, our government will invest $21 million to connect unemployed Canadians with available jobs. Today, I'm pleased to provide details on our plan. One way that we would do this is by making it easier for Canadians who are out of work to identify new opportunities within their communities. This includes simple but effective methods such as sending job alerts to Canadians receiving EI benefits. Currently, Canadians receiving EI benefits are only sent 3 job alerts every 2 weeks. These alerts come from the job bank, which has only about 20% of the jobs that are available. And we believe that this must change. As I said, we must help Canadians who want to work get back to work. As part of our announcement, we will be sending job alerts twice a day to Canadians receiving EI. And the job alerts will come from many sources, including the job bank, but also from private sector sources. The job alerts will provide Canadians receiving EI information about job opportunities within their local area that are within their occupation and related occupations. The second part of our plan is to link EI with the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. This way, we will help connect unemployed Canadians with available jobs. The government is developing approaches to notify Canadians receiving EI benefits through the job alert system when employers are looking for workers, and to ensure that employers can consider Canadians prior to applying to hire foreign workers. The last part of our plan is defining what is meant by suitable employment and what constitutes a reasonable job search. Now, this will ensure impartiality and strengthen requirements for Canadians receiving EI benefits to actively look for and accept all suitable work. Folks, let me be crystal clear about something. These changes are not about forcing people to accept work outside their own area, nor about taking jobs for which they are not suited. En fait, nous précisons simplement ce qu'est un emploi convenable. In fact, we are clarifying how we define suitable employment. We propose that the definition be based on several criteria, including personal circumstances, working conditions, hours of work, and commuting time, which would apply as long as benefits are received. For example, if someone on EI has a health problem that prevents them from taking an available job, then that job will not be deemed to be suitable employment. That is, they will not be required to accept that job. As another example, if there is work available, but someone on EI is not physically capable of performing the work, then that would not be deemed to be suitable employment. Two other criteria, type of work and hourly wages, would vary depending on an individual's EI history and the duration of their claim. As indicated in the Jobs, Growth and Long-Term Prosperity Act, the revised regulations would take into consideration categories of EI claimants in defining suitable employment. We intend to have 3 claimant categories. And the first, long-tenured workers, would be those who have paid into the EI system for 7 of the past 10 years and collected EI, regular or fishing benefits for less than 35 weeks in the past 5 years. Frequent claimants would be those who have had 3 or more regular or fishing claims and collected benefits for a total of more than 60 weeks in the past 5 years. Occasional claimants would be all other claimants. The changes that we are proposing to EI are not about forcing people to move across Canada or to take work that doesn't match their skill set. Our goal is to help Canadians find local work that matches their skills. As examples, we want to help a recently laid-off engineer who has never collected EI benefits get the information that she needs to find a similar job quickly. We want to help a heavy equipment operator that used to work in the oil and gas industry find employment as a heavy equipment operator in the oil and gas sector or another similar sector, such as the construction sector, where his skills can be used. And we want to help a roofer who goes on EI each winter apply his skills with a residential construction company until he can return to his preferred occupation once the local roofing season begins again. By taking temporary employment, he will benefit by maintaining his attachment to the workforce, enhancing his skill set, and earning more than he would have received on EI benefits. Now, this is an important point because the improvements that we are announcing today, combined with other recent announcements about EI, will mean that Canadians receiving EI benefits will always benefit financially from accepting available work. Canadians on EI will be required to accept available work, which will always earn more money working than collecting EI. Now, how does this work? Well, under EI, Canadians receive 55% of their average weekly earnings. Under our improvements, Canadians will never have to accept work that pays less than 70% of their previous income. Clarifying what is expected of claimants looking for work is just one element of our broader plan to encourage and support Canadians as they seek to return to work. EI is an important program here in Canada, and it will continue to be so. These improvements will introduce new, needed, common sense efforts to help Canadians get back to work faster. That's good for the economy, it's good for employers, and it's good for Canadians and for their families. Merci. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Minister. My name is Paul McLeod with the Chronicle Herald. I'll be your moderator today. We have just about 15 minutes for questions, so if I don't know your name, just identify yourself, please. We'll start with Julie Van Dusen of CBC.
You kept emphasizing the idea of matching skills, so I just want to be clear. For example, if you're an unemployed teacher, but there's a job down the road stacking chocolates at the chocolate factory. You're an unemployed scientist, but there's openings picking grapes. Would you not be expected then to take those jobs, or at some point maybe you would be?
No, first of all, there's the 70% rule that salary would have to be within 70%. But engineers and school teachers and scientists have special skills, and we think that everybody would be better off if those skills were being used as they exist. So we want to help people find jobs within their skill range and within their approximate previous salary range.
Okay. And I guess my second question is, how does this change then the ability of, say, farmers to hire temporary foreign workers? Like, what would change here?
Well, in terms of general laborers, there are special programs for that. But if there are local candidates who are registered as general farm laborers on EI, then they would be advised, those claimants would be advised that these new farm jobs exist and would be expected to apply for them. Only once the local domestic supply of workers has been exhausted will the employers be allowed to go offshore to look.
Bill Curry of the Globe and Mail.
Mr. Minister, I was wondering if you could comment on the process of all this, because officials from your department said that there weren't consultations with Canadians on this process. It was announced in the budget bill, and no ministers have been able to explain it until now, and it will ultimately give you the power to change these rules whenever you want through regulation. So can you explain, first of all, why no consultations, and why put this into regulation instead of legislation as it's been before?
Well, there are a couple of questions there, but number one is, when you say, we do consult with Canadians. In fact, since last fall, I've been on the road listening to Canadians, employers, roundtables from across the communities in big cities and small, from one end of the country to another, saying, okay, what do we need to make the country grow? And one of the things they've raised is that there are barriers to people working within the EI system, artificial barriers that discourage people from working. So we have been listening. We said, well, what do we need to do? And they told us. So we have consulted. Also, by going through regulation, as you're probably aware, there is a mandatory consultation process involved in bringing in regulations. But the initial regulations will be developed by the Canadian Employment Insurance Commission, and then whatever their recommendations are would then have to be approved by the Governor and Council. So there is a consultation process that has taken place. May not have been called EI consultations, but we were certainly listening to Canadian workers and to Canadian business.
Follow-up. One point you hear from employers who use temporary foreign workers is they're concerned about work ethic. They say that these workers come in and they show up for work every day, they're happy to work, and they're concerned if they have to be forced to drag in people off EI who don't really want to work, that they're going to have problems with people calling in sick and have all kinds of headaches that way. So what's your message to employers who are expressing those kind of concerns?
Well, in a lot of cases, they can't hire Canadian workers simply because the Canadian workers don't know that the jobs exist. And we're going to help those workers find out about those job postings, those job availability, so they can apply, because Canadians want to work, and we're going to help them get the work. I think that'll help the employers because they don't have the reach that our new job alert system will have. And the employers are always free to retain any employees that they want to or don't want to.
Two questions. First, seasonal workers. How does this impact on seasonal workers? If you bear with me for a minute, if you take a fish plant worker, for example, works 6 months for the season, then there's a job at McDonald's available. It's deemed similar in terms of working around the kitchen. do they do? They work 6 months at the fish plant, go to McDonald's, say to the employer, I'm here for 6 months and then I'm back. So how does this impact seasonal workers?
Well, this is going to impact everyone, because what we want to do is make sure that the McDonald's of the world aren't having to bring in temporary foreign workers to do jobs that Canadians who are on EI have the skills to do. It's about taking advantage of the labor and skills that we have in this country, putting to productive use, and doing it in such a way that the employers are better off, but the employee and his or her family is always better off. And that's why we've made other changes leading up to this announcement, to make sure that the worker is always better off taking work that's available than not. And also it means that that money is here in Canada and not going to outside workers unless absolutely necessary.
And then we heard in the technical briefing that about 1%, maybe 1% will be cut off. Who are you targeting here? It doesn't seem like very much. Where are the bad guys? Who are you targeting?
Well, this program is about helping Canadians, about helping them understand their roles and responsibilities when they're on E, but helping them get back to work in a job that's local and that's within their skill range. And that's what's important here. Now, with any government program, there always is a compliance issue. We're hoping that once Canadians understand the rules, that they will be compliant. In fact, most of them are already, and we expect that to continue. We want to make sure, though, that all Canadians have every opportunity to find a local job within their skill set.
I'm going to go to Barry Wilson of the Western Producer.
Minister, I just want to follow up on Julie Van Duzen's second question. You talked about 250,000 jobs not being filled. The Canadian Agricultural Human Resources Council has estimated 50,000 of those are agricultural jobs that they just can't find workers for. So, and that's a big issue in your writing, I know. So how does this change, and other issues that you're working on, how does that deal with the deficit of workers in the agricultural sector, temporary or permanent?
Well, we always have a number of people, unfortunately, who are on employment insurance. Some of them are very skilled. Some of them aren't. And we want to make sure that the EI system is not a barrier to these individuals getting a job, looking for a job or getting one. And so if an agricultural job, and there are sort of everything from low skill or no skill to very advanced skills, as you're aware, Barry, if someone is unemployed in an area and has the skills that match the requirements of that particular agricultural job, then yes, they will be expected to apply for it. And they will be expected, if offered, to take it. We want to redress the balance right now so that Canadians get first crack at the jobs before we bring in temporary foreign workers. Temporary foreign workers are much more expensive for employers because they have to pay airfare, things like that. But we want to make sure, and that's why we want to make sure that Canadians get first crack at those jobs. So we're sending the extra job alerts to make sure that they were aware of them, and we're changing the compensation structure of EI to make sure that workers are always better off taking available work than being solely on EI.
But if an unemployed worker in your riding doesn't really want to go and pick tobacco, or somebody in the Okanagan really doesn't want to go to pick fruit, will that affect the ability of the farm operator then to bring in temporary foreign workers?
As long as the employer has demonstrated that he or she has tried out the local market, and within reason, then no, they will not be barred from bringing in temporary foreign workers. We need those people. But we need to make sure that Canadians have first crack at those jobs. And that's why we're going to be providing the information to people who are collecting EI so that they know that those jobs are there for them to apply to.
Louise Elliott, CBC. Two quick questions. One is, the literature refers to an increased use of the temporary foreign worker program. Do you have any evidence to quantify that assertion? Because I have not heard the government's been a strong proponent of its temporary foreign worker program. So is there something going on in the temporary foreign worker program that has really raised alarm bells here? And the other question is simply, your officials say there will be no real additional resources to enforce these new rules. Do you think that's going to put a burden on your staff, which, as we've seen, have been under a lot of pressure recently, and there's been some delays in EI to begin with?
Well, to answer your first question, we have seen a dramatic rise in the number of temporary foreign workers that are coming into this country to work, of all skill ranges. And when you overlay that with the notion that we have a lot of unemployed in Canada, then we want to make sure that Canadians are getting first crack at the jobs. Right now, employers are required to demonstrate that they've advertised for Canadian employees and that they've been unsuccessful in finding them. But the problem with that is that many of the workers that the employers could be hiring don't necessarily know about the jobs. So if they're on EI, we're going to be sending them job alerts, way more than in the past, so that the unemployed know about the jobs. And we're going to help them, because bringing in temporary foreign workers to displace Canadians is not acceptable. Not acceptable when we have Canadian skills and talent that could be at work. We want to make sure that work pays, that the worker is better off, even with part-time work, while they're on EI, than not working. So we're gearing a whole lot of different aspects of the EI system to helping Canadians get back to work faster.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We have time for one last question.
Enforcement, the question about enforcement.
Yeah, well, there is, as I mentioned, there is a sum of money, $21 million, that's been set aside to help with this new program. The majority of that will be going to the Job Alerts program, so that Canadians who are unemployed and on EI know of the jobs that are available to them. But there will be some set aside for integrity issues, because we want to make sure that Canadians are compliant, and always with change there are going to be some growing pains, so we're taking that into account. But these will be people who specialize in dealing with EI.
Pour certaines personnes, il vaut parfois mieux prendre un peu plus de temps pour trouver un emploi, mais trouver un emploi qui est au bon salaire, que d'accepter un recul salarial. Est-ce que la façon dont ça va être fait va faire en sorte qu'en fait, c'est plutôt que les gens vont avoir peur de perdre leurs prestations, donc ils vont accepter un salaire moindre?
Nous voulons que toujours le chômeur est mieux s'il travaille ou si elle travaille. Alors, c'est pourquoi nous avons fait des changements au système pour s'assurer. Mais aussi, il faut se rendre compte du fait que tous ces changements sont du bon sens, et nous voulons être toujours justes et raisonnables.
Mais ça, c'est arbitraire.
Dans le cas individuel, selon les conditions locales et individuelles. Mais on va employer du bon sens pour être juste et raisonnable.
Great. Thanks very much, Minister. That wraps up this part of the press conference. Do you have any closing remarks you want to make?
No, that's it. Thanks very much for coming. Merci beaucoup.
To ask Parliament their advice on your regulation? Are you going to consult Parliament? Submit your regulations to Parliament to have their opinion at the committee?
There is a consultation process that is required through regulation, and we'll be following that process. Thank you very much, folks.
That's a big no.